After years of being a dedicated husband, Thomas never imagined that his life would turn upside down because of his wife, Amelia. They had built a life together, home, career, and dreams of growing old side by side. But everything changed one evening when Thomas came home early from a business trip, only to catch a glimpse of something that shattered his world. He entered the house quietly, expecting to surprise Amelia with a home-cooked dinner he had planned to share with her. As he stepped into the living room, he froze. There, on the couch, was Amelia, tangled in the arms of another man. His heart sank as he realized the woman he had loved and trusted was betraying him right under his roof. Amelia looked up, panic flashing across her face when she saw Thomas standing in the doorway. "Thomas, I can explain," she stammered, but her words fell flat in the thick silence that filled the room. The man sitting beside her hurriedly gathered his things and rushed out the door, leaving Thomas and Amelia alone. The betrayal stung deeply, but it was Amelia's inability to even apologize or show remorse that truly broke him. She didn't deny it, didn't offer any explanation beyond her shallow attempts at justification. "I just needed more, Thomas. You were always so distant," she murmured, as if that were enough to erase the hurt she had caused. Instead of raising his voice or demanding an explanation, Thomas did something that would later leave everyone in shock. He stood there, his face expressionless, and simply turned around and walked out. He didn't yell, didn't make a scene. He ghosted her entirely. In the weeks that followed, Amelia tried to reach out. Text messages, phone calls, even desperate visits to his workplace. But Thomas never responded. It wasn't because he was weak or indecisive. No, Thomas had simply realized something in that moment of betrayal. Amelia wasn't the person he thought she was. She had already made her choice, and now it was his turn to make his. He moved on quickly, and with a determination that stunned even his closest friends. He found solace in his work, rediscovered his passion for traveling, and started focusing on the things that had long been neglected: his friends, his hobbies, and his own personal growth. As the months passed, he became a new version of himself, confident and content without her. Amelia, however, struggled. She couldn't handle the guilt, the loneliness, and the humiliation that followed when she realized Thomas had not only moved on, but had done so without a second glance. She spent months trying to rebuild what they once had, but Thomas remained a shadow in her life, elusive and unreachable. Eventually, Amelia came to understand the true power of his decision. The ultimate payback wasn't in revenge or confrontation. It was in the silent strength of his departure. By walking away without a word, he had taken control of his own life, leaving her to live with the consequences of her choices. In the end, Thomas never looked back. He had learned that sometimes the best way to heal from betrayal isn't to fight, but to simply walk away and never return. Months turned into a year, and life for Thomas continued to flourish. He had moved to a new city, a fresh start far away from the memories of his past with Amelia. He had surrounded himself with a supportive circle of friends and was beginning to date again, albeit cautiously. The freedom he now enjoyed was something he hadn't realized he needed until it was fully his. Amelia, on the other hand, found herself sinking deeper into regret. Her attempts to patch things up with Thomas had failed miserably. Friends who once sided with her started distancing themselves, no longer willing to entertain her self-pity or excuses. She had burned too many bridges, and the realization was eating her up inside. Yet, there was still one thing that lingered, a deep, gnawing desire to confront Thomas and, perhaps, seek some form of closure. She eventually found a way. Through a mutual acquaintance, she learned about his new address and workplace. Armed with a fragile sense of hope, she reached out, sending a simple message: "Can we talk?" Thomas, having anticipated this moment at some point, read her message and put his phone down without hesitation. He had moved on, but part of him still wondered if closure was something he owed her. Despite the pain, a tiny flicker of curiosity remained. What did she want now? After some thought, he agreed to meet. He arranged a public place, a coffee shop, where neither of them would have the luxury of turning a conversation into a confrontation. He wasn't sure what she expected, but he was determined to keep things civil. When Amelia showed up, she looked different, older, tired. The woman who once exuded confidence now appeared fragile, uncertain. She had shed her polished exterior, replaced by the vulnerability that Thomas had never seen before. She sat down, her hands trembling as she fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Thomas, I don't know where to start," Amelia said, her voice cracking. I know I ruined everything. I've spent the last year trying to fix the mess I made, but I don't know how to. I was selfish, and I hurt you." Thomas remained silent, his gaze steady but not harsh. He had heard all the words before, though not from her. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers in similar situations. He had listened to their apologies, their regrets. But none of them had ever been sincere enough to warrant a second chance. And Amelia? She was no different. "I'm sorry," she continued, her voice softer now. "I didn't appreciate what I had until I lost it. You were everything to me, Thomas. I took you for granted, and I was too blind to see it." He looked her in the eye. "I know." It was the first honest exchange they had had in months, and neither of them knew where to go from there. The silence hung heavy between them as Amelia waited for him to say more, perhaps to offer a chance to repair things. But Thomas wasn't interested in revisiting a past that no longer existed. "You don't owe me anything, Amelia," Thomas finally spoke, his voice calm but resolute. "You made your choices. I made mine. And what you don't understand is that the best way to hurt me wasn't through the affair, wasn't through lying. It was by walking away from me completely. No explanation, no fights, no closure, just leaving." Amelia's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She had no words left. She thought she had wanted forgiveness, or perhaps reconciliation, but what Thomas had done was the ultimate form of justice. He had removed himself from her life in a way that left her with nothing but the weight of her own actions. Thomas leaned back in his chair, finally breaking the silence. "I don't hate you, Amelia. I don't even feel angry anymore. I just want to be at peace. And that's something I found once I walked away. I'm not looking back. And I hope you can find your own peace, too." Amelia stared at him, her chest tight with regret. The love she thought she could never lose was now a ghost in the rearview mirror. In trying to save her marriage after everything was lost, she had only made her regret more profound. As Thomas stood to leave, he gave her one last, lingering glance. "Take care of yourself, Amelia." And with that, he walked out. There was no dramatic closure, no fiery confrontation, just a simple, quiet act of letting go. For Thomas, it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the life that had been stripped away from him. And in doing so, he had given himself the ultimate freedom, peace. Amelia would never understand the full depth of his decision, but maybe, just maybe, she would learn what he had already known, that sometimes the best way to move forward is to simply let go. Months passed, and life continued on its unpredictable course. Amelia, despite her attempts at self-reflection and growth, found herself stuck in a cycle of regret. The realization that she had let the best thing she would ever have slipped through her fingers gnawed at her every day. Her relationships with friends became more strained, and her personal life felt like an endless void. Without Thomas, everything seemed hollow. She occasionally ran into mutual acquaintances who asked about Thomas, often complimenting how much he had changed for the better after the split. They spoke about his newfound confidence, how he was excelling at work, and how much he seemed to be thriving. Each time she heard these things, it only drove the dagger deeper into her heart. The man she had betrayed was moving forward, building a life without her, and Amelia was left to watch from the sidelines, powerless to undo what she had done. One day, out of sheer desperation, Amelia made a decision. She reached out to one of Thomas's close friends, someone she had stayed in touch with after the divorce, asking if they could meet. The friend, someone who had supported her in the past, was surprised but agreed. When they met, Amelia wasted no time. I know what I did to Thomas is unforgivable, but I need you to tell me, did he really move on? She asked, her voice full of emotion. Does he really not care about me anymore? Her friend paused, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. Amelia, you have to understand something, they said gently. Thomas has done the hard work of moving on. He's not dwelling in the past, and he's not waiting around for you to fix things. He learned to love himself again, and that's where he found peace. The truth is, he's better off without the toxic situation you two had. The word stung, and Amelia fought to keep her composure. She had known deep down that Thomas wasn't waiting for some miraculous reconciliation, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all too real. I don't expect him to forgive me or take me back, she whispered, the tears she had been holding back threatening to spill. I just want him to know how sorry I am, how much I regret what I did. Her friend gave her a sympathetic look, but didn't offer false hope. Amelia, sometimes the most painful thing in life is realizing that certain things are beyond repair. You've already done the hardest part by accepting responsibility for your actions. Now, you need to let him go. He's not your path to healing anymore. Amelia left the meeting that day with a heavy heart. But for the first time in months, there was a flicker of clarity. She didn't need Thomas's forgiveness to heal, nor did she need to try to force her way back into his life. The best thing she could do for both of them was to give him the space he had fought for, and to find her own peace, however long that might take. Weeks turned into months, and Amelia began to take small steps toward rebuilding her life. She focused on her career, worked on repairing her friendships, and sought therapy to help understand the deeper reasons behind her actions. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was incredibly hard. But Amelia finally understood that the ultimate payback wasn't about getting Thomas back. It was about her own growth. The realization that she needed to change for herself, not for anyone else, was a painful but necessary one. Meanwhile, Thomas continued his life with a quiet satisfaction. He had learned that healing didn't come from seeking revenge or closure from others. It came from within. As he traveled more, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating again, he realized that he had reached a place where the pain of his past no longer haunted him. He had reclaimed his sense of self and was, for the first time in years, genuinely at peace. Years later, Thomas would look back at his marriage to Amelia with a kind of detached acceptance. He no longer felt anger or sadness when he thought of her. Instead, there was only gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength he discovered within himself, and for the life he had built after walking away. Amelia, on the other hand, would never forget him. She would always carry the weight of her actions, but in time, she learned to forgive herself. She knew that the journey to redemption wasn't about getting back what she had lost, but about becoming someone worthy of a future, one that didn't rely on the ghosts of the past. And so, life went on for both of them, separate but ultimately shaped by the same painful, yet transformative, experience. Neither would ever be the same, but both would emerge from the ashes stronger, wiser, and free.